Well, hi there. How are you? I hope you're having a wonderful evening this evening. If you've never been here before, my name is Rusty, and this is my channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal. So, this is my channel, um, and yeah, we're going to start tonight. I have pulled out my Scream box set. Yes. And we are in celebration and anticipation for the Scream 5. We are going to take a look at and celebrate and talk about and anything else we can think of. We're going to begin with the first installment of the series. This is 1996's Game Changer, Wes Craven's Scream. So we are going to be talking about that tonight, and in the usual format, we are going to begin with our campfire story, our little campfire horror story. Scream from Wes Craven was released in 1996. It was written by Kevin Williamson, directed by Wes Craven, starring, of course, Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, and the fantastic Drew Barrymore, changing the whole game. Or at least reviving the whole game. Would that be a good way to, put it? So, we are going to begin the story of Scream with gathering around the campfire and getting down to business. Now, Scream begins with probably. I was thinking about this last night when I was watching it, and that was, in my opinion, the opening of the original Scream from 1996 has to be, at least to my knowledge, and if you've seen my movie collection, I certainly have a lot of knowledge. I really consider the opening of the original Scream to be probably the best film opening of any film of any genre that I have ever seen. Drew Barrymore took the role as sort of a cameo, although I don't think you can consider 15 minutes of historical film as a cameo, but you know, she decided to take this role and do that, and so we are introduced to Casey. Now, Casey has a boyfriend named Steve, and usual with slashers, we have pretty people in peril, and Drew Barrymore and her boyfriend, which you don't get to really see aside from bloody and in pain, are definitely pretty people. So it opens up with Drew Barrymore sitting around waiting for her boyfriend Steve to show up, and she starts getting these strange phone calls, sort of like, the old movie When a Stranger Calls. She begins to get these phone calls, very weird phone calls, wanting to know if she wants to play a game, um, asking her about horror movies. And there is so much, what I have learned is called meta. Um, I've never really understood why that is a description that people use on these movies. Meta, it's a very meta movie. I mean, I of course know what the definition of meta is, but I don't know. I guess everybody just has their own thing. So we'll go with it, though. There is so much meta in this movie that it's not funny, or it actually is funny. But the Easter eggs in this movie, which I think was one of Wes Craven's most genius moves with this series, especially with this, first original movie, is fantastic. Little references that every horror fan, would perk their ears up. When he's asking her questions like, who is the killer of Halloween? And you know that there were people. I saw this at the theater when it first came out, and there were literally people, including myself, that were yelling the names out to the screen. You know, who's the killer of, Halloween? Michael Myers, Michael Myers. Everybody, is yelling it at the screen. And it's interesting that, the question that she misses is a question that a lot of people miss. And that in and of itself was incorporated into this movie. When, who is the killer of Friday the 13th? Well, you notice he doesn't say 2, 3, final chapter, Jason lives, or anything like that. He says, who is the killer of Friday the 13th? Now, I remember being in the theater, and I could actually hear people yelling those two different answers. Some people were yelling, Mom. Some people were yelling, Miss Voorhees. Some people were yelling, Pam, Pamela, Pamela. And yet there were also just as many people who were yelling, Jason, Jason, Jason Voorhees, Jason Voorhees. So you kind of saw right there, you kind of saw right there. And if you're asking which one I yelled out, I am a Friday the 13th nut. I did yell out Pam, or Mrs. Voorhees. So I did, yell that out. So I yelled out the correct answer. I still think that Ghostface would have killed her anyway, because of course he would. But I will, not in a bragging fashion, say that I did yell out the correct name. But it showed you right then how people are so in a quick moment. Because that's a big thing. I mean, it's not like he gave her a lot of time to think about it. And the people in the theaters didn't have a lot of time to think about it either. So they yelled out Jason, because you hear Friday the 13th, you think Jason. So it's it's one of those that's an honest mistake. And didn't Drew Barrymore say that's not fair? I think she said that's not fair, if I remember correctly. Just seeing it last night, but if I remember correctly, she said something about it. That's not fair, and it's not fair. That's not a fair question. It is true. It is accurate, and any cinephile egghead is going to get it. But it's not fair, because in a quick moment with your life on the line, it's understandable that you would yell out Jason. So that was a really cute thing by Wes Craven, in my opinion. I also had to look up, because I swear the voice on the phone sounds like Skeet Ulrich, because I can remember when I first heard it, I did think that was Skeet on the phone, and when it turned out to be what we know happened. But here last night, one of the little trivia things I looked up was that Skeet on the phone, and it turns out to be Robert Johnson or Jackson or something like that. I can't remember what the name was, but it was one singular guy who made the phone calls. So it wasn't Skeet, but I remember when I first saw it, that when I heard Skeet talking in the movie, I immediately suspected him, because I thought that was him on the phone. The voices really do sound, if you go back and listen to it, if you listen to Skeet's voice, Billy's, if you listen to Skeet's voice and then go and listen to those phone calls, there are moments in which you swear that's Skeet on the phone. Of course, I guess that would have given it away, and in one way, to me anyway, it did, because I always suspected Billy when the movie was going on, back when I first saw it. Yes, it was a long time ago, but I did see it in theaters in 1996, and I did suspect Skeet all along through the movie. So we end up in this fantastic opening, and like I said, to me, it is. We're always used to openings in movies, and horror movies especially like to throw in the opening kill or the opening motive. That's the two things they like to do. Now, either they throw in an opening kill scene, or they throw in a motive scene, such as in Terror Train. The opening scene is fantastic, and it is the motive of the movie. You get to see the killer have that awful prank played on him that causes all the murders later on. In Prom Night, the original Prom Night, the opening kill instead of it is also a motive. You get to see the kids accidentally kill the sister, Jamie Lee Curtis's sister. So you get to see the motive. So a lot of movies use an opening kill and or an opening motive scene, and of those that do, which there's a lot of them, and it's not just horror, but horror is really good about it. But you can have, dramas, sci-fi stuff, the opening scene, whether it's 5 minutes or 20 minutes, is a prevalent, it's a common thing in film. Of those that do have that, this is the best across any genre of any movie that I've ever seen, is Drew Barrymore's kill scene, Casey's kill scene in Scream. There's just nothing that tops it. It is flawless from beginning to end. Bloody, gory, the way that she almost gets to the end. I mean, she's literally just feet from her parents, and yet because her throat is cut, she can't speak the words. It's just perfect, and I think that that's one of the reasons that this movie is such a masterpiece in the minds of horror fans, is because the rest of the movie, of course, but because of the huge impact that Drew Barrymore's scene had in Scream. The theater that I remember, I saw it several times when it was at the theater. I think I went back 2 or 3 times with friends to see it because it was so good, and you just had to go and take friends that had not seen it, and you had to go with them to experience it with them. So, I'm going to try to move on, talking on and on about that opening scene, because otherwise we won't get to the rest of it. So, after the kill scene, we are, of course, transported to high school, and we get to meet one of the first little cute cameo appearances, which is Henry Winkler of Happy Days. He's the Fonz. We get to see the Fonz, which was, like, oh my God, I know him. So seeing the Fonz as the principal was absolutely cool as hell. And we get to meet the rest of the gang, I guess you would call our core victim group. And that was, Dewey. We get to, all about the same time right there at the beginning of the school. We get to meet Dewey and Randy and Stuart and Tatum and Sydney. They're all right there. We get right about the same time frame, during this part of the movie. We get to meet and start being introduced into these, to the little gang of the movie. So, after school is canceled because of the things that are going on, we end up, going with Sydney back to her house, where we get the first hint that something is going on. She hints about it being a reminder that it feels familiar, all of this, the murder and the media hoopla that was going on. And they don't make you wait very long before they show her sitting, and watching a news report on the issue, the murder of Casey and Steve. And it talks about how familiar it was to the murder, or rape and murder, just a year ago, of what we determine at that point is her mother. So now we've got another piece of the puzzle, and that is her mother was raped and killed just a year ago in the town, and here it is, pretty much very near the anniversary of this situation. And so, right after that, we experienced the first attack on Sydney. So, Sydney receives phone calls and is immediately attacked by Ghostface. So, we are introduced once again. The pacing of this movie is very, very good too, in that it definitely, there's not a whole lot of slowdown in this movie, which, it's like, it is sort of like a roller coaster, and just like in a roller coaster, when you get to the top of the hill, there is a slowdown, but it's very quick, and then you go. And so this movie really is like a roller coaster in that way, a very, very long roller coaster. That's another thing that I want to mention about this movie. I Not only do I dislike Twitter syndrome, but I definitely don't have Twitter syndrome. And this movie is almost 2 hours long. It's an hour and 51 minutes, and that's the way that I like them. I like long movies. I do not like short movies. I've heard people, oh, well, give this movie a shot. It's only 70 minutes. And I'm like, well, I don't want to see it then. Yeah, well, you only need to take as much time as it takes to tell the story. Okay, well, that might be true, but obviously you're not giving me a big enough story then, because if you can do it in a little over an hour, I'm not really that interested. I'm not saying I hate every movie that's short, but it's not a selling point with me. So I really love the fact that, Scream is a decent length. I like about 2 hours is where I'm happy. Give me an hour and 50 minutes to an hour, 2 hours and 10 minutes, and I think that's pretty perfect for me for a good movie. So, after Sydney is attacked, we had seen earlier in our first introduction to Sydney, we had also been introduced to Billy, and I'm not a huge fan of that scene, the little come through the window, you're frigid now, and can we do a little of the on top of the clothes stuff? And I'm not like a really huge fan of that scene, because I'm like young, maybe it's my orientation, if you know what I mean. But I don't know, it just seemed so juvenile. I mean, these aren't 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds, not that I think, they should be doing that. I'm just saying, it just seemed, in the whole movie, aside from Stewart, in the in the whole movie, that was really the only juvenile scene to me, was that little scene right there. I thought that was really juvenile, and I purge it from my mind. I don't hate it. It doesn't make me dislike the movie. I don't really consider it like a hateful negative. I'm just like, I didn't care anything about it. They could have done that away without being so hokey. So I thought that was really hokey, but it doesn't detract from the film, because it's an hour and 51 minutes long. So that little 3 or 4 minute scene really doesn't, hurt. So she has been attacked, and we have this nice little attack scene. And then I'll be damned if Billy doesn't come through the window, which I can remember back then was making me go, yeah, So a phone, a mobile falls out of his pocket, and you can tell that she begins to suspect him, and everybody else suspects him. And he gets arrested and taken to the police station, where we get to learn a little bit more about Dewey, who is, this movie is a big crush of mine. This movie has some really healthy crushes to me. It doesn't like come up to the level of The Covenant as far as eeny, meeny, miny, mo, so many gorgeousness. But, I really crushed on Randy. I really crushed on Dewey. I really crushed on Billy, because I've always loved Skeet Ulrich. So, there was a lot of good crushing in this movie. And I guess the other side of the fence, they've got Sydney and they've got Gail and they got Casey and they got Tatum. So this movie was really good about giving both sides of the fence a lot of crush material. So that's another really positive thing about this movie. So Billy was, like I said, he was arrested, and the mystery, is really starting to be woven in the minds of the audience. And we are, of course, introduced a lot more to Gail Weathers at that time. What was it? Outside, Gail starts like talking to her, and Sydney gives her that really good face punch. That was excellent, because they're at the jail and they're leaving, and she corners her in the back, and you don't know about the other stuff yet. Wes Craven was really good about putting little nuggets around prior to revealing the stuff, and we had seen Cotton. We had seen Cotton in this little miniature, little small news clip, and now Gail starts talking about her book, and Sydney ends up slugging her, which was great, and it's one more step. Who is Gail? What is she talking about? What is this book? Why did Sydney look funny when we saw that Cotton person? Well, he's the murderer of her mother. And so yeah, you've got these little things inching forward. Let's see where we're at. It's about that time that we also get, looking at my notes, that's what it means by meta, right? Because there's so many little things that you got to write down. But it was right about here that we get to learn about Cotton, is the supposed killer of the mother, and that it was Sydney's testimony, what she had seen, and her testimony that put him not only in prison but on death row. So Cotton is on death row for the murder, and that's Cotton is played by Liev Schneider. Yeah, is that it? And Liev. People like to call him Liev, and I'm like, no, it's according to him, it's pronounced Liev. So Leeev, Liev. But yeah, so that's Cotton, and so he's supposedly the one who murdered Sydney's mom. And this is where we get the little 5-second Linda Blair cameo. And if you've never noticed, or if you're not into the trivia, there is like a 5-second scene in which Linda Blair, uncredited, has a 5-second cameo where she plays the annoying reporter. I think that's what they call her, the annoying reporter or something like that. But I recognized her instantly because people who have only seen her in The Exorcist, they don't really have that mental image of her as an adult. But my favorite movie of Linda Blair's is not The Exorcist. My favorite movie of Linda Blair's is Hell Night. And she was an adult when she made that. So I've always been used to, when I think of Linda Blair, I see her as, the girl in Hell Night. And she's an adult in that. So I instantly recognized her in that scene, that little cameo that she had. So it was also during this time that you get to hear the full story between Gail and Sydney, because they start, Gail starts like questioning her about Cotton, and that's where you get the full story, that Gail is writing a book in which she is defending Cotton because she does not believe that he was the murderer. She believes that he was set up and framed, and that that's what her gripe is with Sydney. That's why she's on Sydney's ass, is because of that fact. So that's the reason why they have this tension between them. So, Wes Craven was really good about how he slowly introduced you and interwove these little bits of information for you to be able to start coming up with the main, goals of the movie. So, after we have the Linda Blair cameo, and we have the argument between, well, I don't know if it was really an argument. It was just more like a monologue by Gail towards Sydney about Cotton and that whole thing. We then get to see, um, the freakout scene by the principal, the Fonzie, when those two boys who had been like running through the school in Ghostface gear and attacked Sydney in the bathroom, which, they never really let you know whether that was one of them or whether it was real, so they kind of did leave it up to you. But in any event, the way he freaked out with those scissors in the principal's office when he attacked the two boys about, and suspended them for showing that, and that's when he canceled school. And it was during that bathroom confrontation that Sydney, you got to hear more of the story. This was a little bit more of the story intro, where Sydney comes into the bathroom right before that attack. She comes into the bathroom and she hears these two girls, one who defends her, kinda, and one who is just like ripping her to shreds, have this conversation about the past. They have a conversation about Sydney. They have a conversation about Sydney's mother. They have a conversation about the rumors and everything about Sydney's mother. So that also led you into a lot more of the story. So you're getting to see this really clear picture now of Sydney, the past, what had happened to her, what was going on now, the mood around town, what people believed, and it's all coming together, which was another genius move by Wes Craven, in my opinion, in this movie. So school's canceled, and then we get to see Fonzie get killed. We get to see the kill scene where the principal is killed, and that was like really humorous. That scene was really humorous, while at the same time grotesque, because when he is finally killed, it's ugly. I mean, I've always preferred, what would you call it, blitzkrieg attacks with a knife instead of, that's always disturbed me more. The old one, or throat slash or something like that, the old slow stab, they're cool and everything, but what gets me is a blitzkrieg, and that's where it's you jump on someone with a knife and it's jab, 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 jab. A blitzkrieg attack with a knife with multiple stabs as opposed to just one, or a throat slash, or something like that. So Fonzie, the principal, that's that kill. I mean, he stabs him 3 or 4 times in the span of 2 or 3 seconds. So it's sort of a blitzkrieg kill, and that was really cool. And another little bit of trivia, or another Easter egg of this movie, is right before that occurred, and he had kept hearing the noises, and he looked out the door, and he looked down the hall, and they showed a janitor with a mop and bucket, and he had on Freddy Krueger's hat, and he was wearing Freddy Krueger's shirt. So the janitor, had Freddy Krueger's hat on, and he had Freddy Krueger's shirt on, and that little second where the principal looked out the door to see who was making that noise. Then he went back in and got stabbed to death. So that's one of the other cool. That's one of the things that I was mentioning about this movie being so full of little split second off the cuff references. You know, the whole reason Linda Blair was in this for that second is because earlier they had been talking about The Exorcist. So there you go. You know, that's how she ended up, doing a little cameo, is because they had mentioned The Exorcist earlier in the movie. So now that the principal has been killed, we see Janitor Freddy, which I just talked about. Um, Sydney begins to doubt Cotton's guilt. I mean, hearing what other people are saying, like those girls in the bathroom, seeing what's went on, you can tell that she is beginning to have these little cracks, because one of the things that Gail had told her was, if you stop and think about what you witnessed, you witnessed someone running away with the jacket. You witnessed, Cotton's jacket, and it was found in his car, but you never really saw him. And I think that that is where Gail had really started making progress and chipping away at Sydney's idea that Cotton was the killer, that she was correct in what she witnessed and what she believed. And I think that that is how Gail started making leeway with her, because she really did start, thinking that perhaps Cotton was not the killer, or she started doubting herself in any of that. So we then go to the video store, the video store scene, which is hilarious, and I'll talk about Stuart in a little bit, but the video store scene is hilarious. I mean, it is a genius scene. The stuff that they say, but the things that were said between Randy and Stuart were absolutely hilarious. And with Billy right over there, and also a little bit of trivia. Like I said, I try to. There's so much trivia and stuff in this movie. That's the reason why it is so well loved by, and everybody's so geeky over it. Um, there was an award show for extras. I can't remember who did it. It might have been Joe Blow. It's some bigger channel, but they did it's sort of like this little award show where it was giving awards to extras in movies that were literally uncredited. They were just extras in the movies who really stood out to the point where they were actually remembered by people. And this video scene has an extra. There is a blonde girl who is standing on the aisle behind Randy and Stuart as they are, yakking back and forth about killing their girlfriends and stuff like that. And she was one of the award winners of that show, because she really, you notice how she looks at them and how she rolls her eyes, and she really makes an impact on that scene despite the fact that she's just a random extra. So I've always remembered that about this movie. And I thought it was very cool, and that channel did that little video on extras that made impacts in movies, and they had that scene and that girl um, as one of their award winners for an extra who made an impact in a movie that people remembered despite them, not really being in the movie other than just a little extra scene. So that's a little bit of trivia to me about the movie, is I always look for that girl and watch her roll her eyes and walk away at the stupidity between these two morons, because I don't really think of Randy as a moron, but he's just a total geek. Stuart's the moron. we'll get to that later. So now after the video store scene, we end up at the house party at Tatum's house. So Tatum is throwing this, that's Rose McGowan. I just got one of her other movies. You can see in my video I just did, my pickups for November, called Rosewood Lane. Rose McGowan's in it. And so yeah, that's who Tatum is. So Tatum is throwing this party, and I just love the atmosphere of this party. And Dewey is there, and Gail shows up because Gail's a nosy reporter. So Gail, thinks that, I think that Gail is the one. That's one thing I consider about Gail, is that Gail is the one who's got the most insight in this movie. I think Gail really knew not what was going on, but she knew something was going on. She was correct, after all. She was correct. Cotton was not the killer of Sydney's mother. She, Sydney was wrong about that. There was the wrong guy on death row. And Gail, she comes across as a really arrogant asshole, because she mostly is. But at the same time, she is right about these things. So she shows up at that house because she knows that's where the action is, and she knows things aren't done, and she knows something is going on, and whatever is going on is around Sydney. It is based on Sydney. So to me, Gail Weathers has the most insight. She is the person with the most insight in this movie, the original, because it's true, So we have that really cool scene, or scenes. We're at the party. Gail and her cameraman, who is pretty cool, sets up their van. She manages to play off Dewey, whom I absolutely love. Dewey. She plays off of him. Dewey is just so damn cute. And I do like the dumb ones. I don't know. I've been accused of that, I've been accused of liking to date airheads. So maybe you can see my attraction to Dewey. It's just... But she manages to get Dewey to go into the house, go into the house with him, where she manages to plant a camera, and the camera is hooked up to, the van, where they got the van going out there. The problem is, which is a major point, is that between the camera and the receiver, there's a 30-second delay, so that's kind of important. So they're watching what goes on into the house. Her and Dewey end up sneaking off and going away down the road, and we get Tatum's kill. I'm not sure how I feel about Tatum's kill. I think it works out all right. I don't know. I've heard a lot of people say they would have rather her been slashed and stuff instead of, killed by the automatic garage door. But at the same time, it reminded me of that one of the kills in Resident Evil, the original Resident Evil, and that is, sticking your head through something and then seeing it come as it goes up. So she's attacked in the garage and manages to kick his ass a little bit and get him off of her, and she tries to escape through the kitty door, which, I don't know. I mean, I kind of thought when she did it, I think guys have a tendency to overestimate their body size and their weight. Believe it or not, guys are really prone to anorexia, bulimia. Just like it's not talked about as much, but guys really, there's a lot of guys that overestimate. They think they're fatter than they are, think they're bulkier or more muscular than they are. But girls have a tendency to be one or the other. Either you overestimate or you underestimate. And Tatum, like, I think when she looked at that cat door, she thought she was just a little petite thing that could squeeze right through it, and it ain't that way. You know? I'm like, yeah, your ass is a little bit bigger than you think it is, girl. You know what I mean? So, I think you've been, twerking once too often and thought, that you had it all built right, but it didn't turn out that way for her because she gets kind of stuck in there. And at the same time, he sees that, the killer sees that, and starts lifting the door, which ends up crushing her head and breaking her neck. So she has ended up hanging there the whole time. And I kept wondering, as all the people left the party, how come nobody ever saw her hanging over there? But I think you had to be in the right position. If you look at the front of the house, you had to drive around over here to the thing. So yeah, I mean, I guess I can see how people could miss it. So then you have, so now that you've got Tatum's kill, we move back into the house and you get to hear Randy's rules, which is so cute. And there's another cutie, and that is, it's really cool when he gets all angry and he stands up in front of the TV and he lays out his rules for horror movies, and what you're supposed to do and not be, not do. You have to be a virgin or this is going to happen. And, so I really loved him. I can't repeat the rules, but I'm sure there's a geek out there who can. But he gives his rules, and they're talking about Jamie Lee Curtis, and they've got, her on the screen and stuff. And so all of that is really, really cool. Like I said, Scream is not only a fantastic horror movie in and of itself, a fantastic slasher, but it's a fantastic fan service for the horror genre. Scream as fan service for the horror genre is just immense because of all of the little Easter eggs and the little references and things like that are done during the film. I think that Scream pretty much is the most fan service movie that exists for horror, especially slasher. Genre fans are just, it's that little things that kind of like pick you up during a movie, you know. I'm trying to think of a good example. It's like, I'm a huge Stevie Nicks fan. She's the #1 female artist of all time, in my opinion. And there is a movie called Sid and Nancy with Gary Oldman, and Courtney Love is in it. I'm a big fan of Courtney Love as well. But there is a scene in that movie where Courtney Love is talking to the girl who plays, Nancy Spungen. And in this little restaurant scene, they're talking about clothes, and they start talking about these clothes that are over there, and they're kind of making fun of each other by talking about, hey, yeah, if you dress like that, you're going to look like Stevie Nicks. And so there's this little exchange between them in which they happen to mention somebody that I am a huge fan of. So it gives this little extra bump, to have something mentioned that you like. So this movie is so full of little references like that, whether it's, the Linda Blair cameo, whether it's all of these mentions of the horror movies, whether it was the game Drew Barrymore said at the beginning, having its natural human reaction to be kind of thrilled, be kind of drilled, and be kind of, oh, they mentioned Halloween, oh, they mentioned this, they mentioned that. So Randy's rules were really cool, just like in the video store when he was mentioning all these different horror movies. So where are we at now? Okay. I've lost my place. Randy's rules. Okay. So, Dewey and Gail are down the street. Like I said, they had went for a walk where they discover Sydney's dad's car. And that was one of the things that you had wondered about, that Wes Craven had kind of snuck in about, whether it was who could be the possible killers, and Sydney's dad had, come up a couple of times as being possibly a problem. And they find his car, and that's where they had shared that one little kiss, which begins the whole Dewey and Gail thing, which, I like Gail, but you really need to keep your hands off Dewey, and that doesn't happen, unfortunately. But so they, end up finding his car, and they start running back up to the house. And during the meantime, of course, Sydney has went upstairs and has finally went to bed with Billy. So they finally get that out of the way, which made me feel real bad for her, because by that time I was pretty much sure that Billy was the killer. And I'm like, girl, you're sleeping with the murderer. I'm telling you. I mean, I ain't proved it yet, but I'm telling you, something's rank, of course. But then again, I can't really blame her that much, because it's Skeet Ulrich, right? I mean, I could probably see myself making that same mistake. So I didn't damn her too much for it, but I did know, you know what I mean? So, right after her and Billy get through, all of a sudden, Ghostface comes through the door and attacks Billy and slashes him all up, and you think Billy's dead, yeah. And she manages to escape out the window, where she jumps to, down, and here begins the slasher chase scenes, because she gets down there, she finds Tatum's body, she's running around screaming for help, she manages to see the camera truck, the camera van, knocks on it, gets in there with him, then they notice on the camera Ghostface behind Randy, which upset me because I thought Randy was dead at that time. And then the cameraman realized, oh, wait a second, there's a 30-second delay. So he gets out of the van, but right as he's getting out of the van, that's when it occurs to him, hold on, there's a 30-second delay, but it's too late for his ass, because Ghostface is, slashes him. So his throat is cut. Sydney's attacked. She gets through the van, through the conduit, gets out the back, and here we have the runs and runs and runs. The traditional classic Final Girl slasher type runs are going on. And she manages to get back to the house, where Stuart and Randy appear outside, because Randy had showed up outside with Gail when Gail had got to the van, and she had hit him several times with the mobile in the face. So he's outside. Then you see Stuart show up. Dewey has been stabbed on the front porch by Ghostface, and he's laying there on the porch. So Sydney doesn't really know what to do. She grabs Dewey's gun. She gets back into the house. And here comes Randy and Stuart blaming each other. He's the killer. No, he's the killer. No, he's the killer. No, he's the killer. And so she's like, fuck you both, and slams the door on them. And she's, in there, and there you go. So the audience is quite what the fuck. I mean, you think Billy's dead. You've got Randy and Stuart screaming at each other, who's the killer? So they're arguing about that. And at this time, the audience really is, I don't know. Wes Craven was absolutely wonderful at this point, because despite your suspicions and despite what you think's going on, you really don't know. And then when they do manage to get back in there, Billy is coming down the stairs from upstairs, and you think, oh, Billy's still alive. And he comes down to the bottom. Stuart's there. Randy's there. and they reveal the big reveal. You know, the big reveal is given. It's Billy and it's Stuart together. They are partners. They have been doing this the whole time. So Sydney is blown away. The audience is blown away. I didn't really suspect Stuart, but I suspected Billy all along. So at least I was half surprised. And they start yelling about motives, and there's a bunch of really cool dialogue between them as Sydney tries to understand why you're doing this. And so at first Billy is like, there is no motive, and that's what makes it so cool, is that there is no motive. But then he admits that there is a motive, and you find out that he has this plan, that he had been doing it all along, that Billy, Sydney's mom, let's face it, Sydney's mom really was what people said about her. She was a promiscuous hoe. Nobody wants to believe that about their mother, but that was the truth, and it is kind of a truth that Sydney had started to, that's what started shaking her foundations about Cotton, you know, because she didn't believe that they had an affair, and now she starts finding out that she was having an affair with lots of people. And, you know, the whole basis of her disbelief was that Cotton was the killer, because Cotton was lying about having an affair with her. But she has slowly discovered through the time, you know, through the length of this movie, that her mother was a promiscuous hoe. So Billy informs her that he set this all up from way back then. So he was the one who murdered her mother. That's how long this plan had been going on. He murdered her mother because her mother is the one who's sleeping with his dad, and his dad, that caused his mom to leave them and abandon them, and that's the motive. That's what he was doing all of this for. As far as Stuart, his motive was he was just a psycho, and why not? So that was his motive. So they then drag out Sydney's dad, who they had, you know, kidnapped in the thing, and they had this plan that they were going to kill Sydney, frame the dad, and get away scot-free. Now, unfortunately for them, what they didn't know was that Gail had came up, and Randy had been shot. You know, when they first did their reveal, they had shot Randy, and with that gun, they had sat there. They did all of this talk in the kitchen with Sydney, giving her the motives, telling her their plot. This is what was going to happen. And that's when Stuart realized that the gun wasn't there. And one of the funniest, I don't know if it was funny, one of the most interesting scenes was that they were stabbing each other. Stuart and Billy were like stabbing each other, and just couldn't, because they had to, right? It was part of the plan. They had to survive this, they had to have been attacked by the dad and Sydney. So they almost couldn't stop, you know? And Stuart really got on my nerves during this scene. As crazy as it was, that was a hilarious scene. Then when Stuart realizes that the gun is gone, Gail ends up with the gun to rescue them. And so Gail ends up, you know, firing, and she has been knocked out. So she, you know, they had knocked her out earlier, so she was laying there with Dewey on the front porch, knocked out. She had came back to, was getting, Sydney manages to escape. I put I just noticed that on my notes after it said, that it said, it said Stewart is a moron, which is one of those things I want to talk about. But it just says Stewart is a moron. Sydney kills Stewart, so I was actually kind of happy about that. But so Sydney kills Stewart. Randy is still alive, which thrilled me. And then Gail shoots Billy. And then when Billy stands back up, because that's always got to happen in a horror movie, Sydney shoots him in the forehead. And Dewey comes to and is alive as well. So there's the little notes about that little scene of the ending. Sydney kills Stewart. Randy's alive. Gail shoots Billy. Dewey's alive, and then he pops back up, and Sydney shoots him in the head. Yeah, but yeah, that was funny that I put Stewart as a moron. So let's talk about that. With each rewatch, Stewart irritates me more and more. I mean, the character. I mean, him as an actor, I guess. I mean, that's all right for Scooby-Doo, but I have to say that Stewart's character in this movie is probably, he is one of those that takes the dumb jock geek or whatever you would want to call it to the point of irritation that if Stewart, the character of Stewart, was in my life or in my house, I don't think I could stand to be around him for more than 15 minutes. He is so animated, and that's sort of like the only negative to me about this entire movie is his character. I thought it was funny as hell when I first saw it, but each time I rewatch Scream, I just want to punch Stewart more and more and more. I think it's just that personality type, He is so loud and he is so silly, and he reminds me of some of the idiotic faces that, I don't really like physical humor that much. And Jim Carrey could always irritate me because Jim Carrey was actually an attractive guy, but the faces that he made, the irritating, he made himself look so ugly with his faces. And Stewart's kind of that same way, the actor who plays Stewart. Those goofy, retarded faces that he makes all the time, really, I just want to punch him, And I have discovered that the more times that I watch Scream, now I wouldn't want the movie without him. It all works perfectly and everything. I'm just saying on a personal level, I just really want to beat the hell out of Stewart. I can't stand him as a person. And if he was, I don't think I could stay in the same room with him talking the way he talked. All of the animated facial expressions and the eyes and the silly mouth and just everything about Stewart, I could not stand to be anywhere near him. That's just something I happened to notice when I rewatched it last night. Was, you saw it, I wrote it down on the notes, Stewart is a moron. Yeah, I didn't. It's like every time I watch it, I realize more and more how absolutely I want to punch him in the face. I just can't stand him as a character. And the truth is, I wouldn't want anyone around me that was like that. So, yeah, that's just a little bit of trivia. So there we have it. There's the story. Wes Craven was an absolute genius with this movie. I think that this Scream is one of those game changer movies, like The Terminator, like Alien. There's just certain times that a movie comes along, Friday the 13th, Halloween. Um, there are just certain, Nightmare on Elm Street. There's just certain movies that come along that are just like iconic, and Scream is an iconic movie. I love the Scream franchise. Unlike some of the other franchises, but then again, there's only been four. But I love every one of the Scream movies. Whereas in, several of the Halloweens I don't like. As a matter of fact, Resurrection is one of my most hated movies of all time. It's like right up there tied with Prom Night Remake as the worst horror movie ever made, in my opinion. And I've seen some bad ones, but I just absolutely hate that. Several of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, I basically just love the first four and worship the first two. But I don't really care for any of the rest of them. Friday the 13th is the same way. I love the first five, maybe six, but the rest of them I cannot stand. I do like the remake. So yeah, Scream is one of those. Granted, it's only had five. I love all of the five Final Destinations. I love all three, believe it or not. I love all three. Yes, I like number three of I Know What You Did Last Summer. But Scream is one of those. There's no bad one. I don't dislike them. I really hate ranking them because I do love them all. Same with Resident Evil. There's people who don't like some of the Resident Evil installments. That's not me. I'm a total fanboy. I love them all. And I'm a total fanboy with Scream. I don't dislike any of the Scream movies. And I will do my ranking when I do the fourth one. So that's it, 1996. Do you think Scream is an iconic movie? You let me know. We're going to do these in anticipation and celebration of Scream 5. This is from the box set that I got. The Scream box set. I like the special features disc that's in it, and I like the booklet that's in it. The little Scream booklet that comes in it with all kind of facts and trivia and cute little stuff like that. So it's a really cool box set. You can still find them. If you can find them, they're good little collector's items. I do need to replace these, I guess, with Blu-ray, but even if I replaced them, I wouldn't give this away because of the special features Blu-ray DVD that comes with it. So yeah. And then of course we have Scream 4. This has just got the first three in it, and then we have Scream 4. So we're going to do them all. We're going to do them all in celebration and preparation for the new upcoming Scream 5, which they don't call it Scream 5, but it's Scream 5, and I'm so tired of people naming movies the same name. It makes it very hard to search. It makes it very hard to catalog, So the new movie is not called Scream. It's Scream 5. If you're too stupid to give it a subtitle, fine. It's Scream 5, and that's just the way it is. But I will be back with Scream 2 momentarily, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me read my notes on it. And yeah, I think I hit what I wanted to hit in it. 1996, Scream, and we will continue on with this franchise. And love you, miss you, bye. Glad to tune in. Glad you tuned in. Seeing this later. Let me know down in the comments what you think about Scream and the franchise itself, and anything I may have missed. It's hard to do these because they're so meta that trying to write down every little piece of trivia that caught me in the movie is very hard for this franchise. So Appreciate you stopping by. Love you, miss you, bye. And I will see you in the next one. Stay scary and keep screaming. When appropriate, of course. You know.